You know that character? The one who trips over their own feet, cracks jokes at the worst times, and generally acts like they've got no clue what's going on, ever? You're laughing at them, not with them. But then in the heat of battle, when everything's on the line, they drop the act, or maybe they just realize their genuine potential, and suddenly they're the most competent person in the room.
That's got to be the best part I've ever seen.
So it would seem.
That, my friends, is what is known as a crouching moron, hidden badass. Think Jackie Chan bumbling his way through a fight only to turn into a masterclass of martial arts at the last second. Or The Flash in basically every iteration where he's a simple jokester until it actually genuinely matters. These characters are the ultimate bait and switch. They lure you in with laughs and then bam, they hit you with some of the most serious skill you've ever seen. And it is one of my favorite tropes that I ever get to see because nothing is quite as fun as seeing a lovable, dopey character show that they have some serious competency too. So let's talk about making it happen at your table.
Screw this.
It's more of a demonstration reel.
Guys, you do not want to do this, trust me. All right, have it your own way.
Mask!
Copy.
That sucked.
All right, let's break down what makes the Crouching Moron Hidden Badass so damn fun and what the trope is as a whole. On the surface, these characters are goofballs, jokers, and the ones who seem like they're only ever there to lighten the mood. But here's the twist, they actually do have some genuine skills hidden under all that silliness. And when the moment's right and they unleash it in a way that leaves everybody picking up their jaws off the floor, you cannot help but root for them. You've probably seen this in action more times than you realize in most media. I mentioned some examples at the beginning, but there are plenty more that you could pull from to get inspiration for this type of character. One of my favorite examples being Uncle Iroh from Avatar: The Last Airbender. See, when Iroh is first introduced, he is genuinely just a joke character. He is there for comedic relief.
Are you so busy fighting you cannot see your own ship has set sail?
We have no time for your proverbs, Uncle.
It's no proverb.
Hey! That's my boat!
Maybe it should be a proverb.
This is actually helped by the fact that Avatar: The Last Airbender was initially released with a younger demographic in mind than they would initially end up catering to. Because of this, he really did just seem like the bumbling fool of an uncle. Very funny, very silly, not very special. Even when he does something incredibly skillful and badass, such as redirecting lightning, it's played off for a joke as if he is not somebody to be taken super seriously. Even though we know that he's supposed to be the actual teacher for one of the dangerous antagonists in the show, Zuko himself is never taken that seriously, and therefore we don't even take Iroh that seriously. It is not until later in the series where we see how genuinely capable he is, and that hidden badass of the trope begins to come out. So what makes these characters work is that they're not just comic relief. They're a full-on surprise package most of the time. They keep you laughing, sure, but when they hit you with something unexpected, something that makes you realize that you've underestimated them all along, that's where the fun begins. And so how do you bring a character like this into your roleplay game? Fuck, English is so hard. It's all about understanding the different types of this trope, honestly, because there are more than you might initially realize. Unlike most tropes that I talk about, there are many different assets of this and factions that you can place your character into to fully embrace it. So let's talk about them. The first one that most people understand is the faker, and Iroh could go underneath this role. Its characteristics usually show them deliberately acting silly or harmless to mask their true capabilities. They often have troubled or mysterious pasts, leaving them to want to act silly not only for the sake of people underestimating them, but also for the sake that they can hide what they've genuinely been through, whether it is a barrier to protect themselves or to protect others.
Our battle ended 500 years ago.
Well, now I'm ready for a rematch.
Took you long enough.
And again, Iroh falls perfectly under this trope. He is genuinely a war criminal. And as much as I love the character, he's a war criminal. He has committed war crimes. And so, of course, he wants to act silly and aloof in order to protect himself from his own mysterious past, protect other people from it, and so he fits this very well. They usually prefer to be seen as a lovable goof until the situation demands otherwise. Another excellent example of this type of character is Columbo. Columbo is amazing as a character for this archetype because generally his whole strategy and the way that most people remember him is acting a little aloof, disinterested, confused, as if he doesn't really know what's going on.
Oh, one more thing, sir. We got something else on the gun. Did I mention that?
No, you didn't. What, Lieutenant?
A thread, sir.
From the parka?
No, sir. We haven't traced the garment from which the thread came from yet, sir.
Lieutenant, if I were you, I'd get a search warrant for all 4 people involved.
Yes, sir. That's just exactly what I've done, sir. In fact...
He'll ask incredibly simple questions as if he's forgotten what the character said earlier, and then, when a time comes to, he sticks them with the crime by pointing out an inaccuracy in what they said and placing the whole thing in front of them, leaving them totally confused as to why this dim-witted person in front of them suddenly knew so much and was able to outsmart them so easily.
Bravo, Lieutenant. Even I didn't remember that.
Didn't you, sir? My goodness, that's funny. You see, because one of the reasons that I remembered the sweater was because you got hooked on it that day. Supposing Ward Fowler had planted that thread on the gun himself.
Lieutenant, I thought we agreed that I had what you called an ironclad alibi.
Yes, sir, but you know as well as I do that you could have rigged that alibi.
A second faction of this type of archetype is known as the split personality, and I feel like this one's pretty self-explanatory. That somebody has 2 distinct personalities that could take over, one goofy and silly, the other serious and competent. And this is honestly one that is a little bit more difficult to do, especially in a TTRPG. I mean, yeah, you can play a split personality if you really want to, but the mechanics don't typically support this type of behavior unless you put in a lot of homebrew rules or other things. But the point is this type of character is somebody who will swap on a dime and is generally not aware of the other aspect of their personality. A great example of this is Zenitsu from Demon Slayer. He is usually a bumbling fool who's terrified of everything that's going on, but whenever he falls asleep, suddenly he locks in and becomes one of the most dangerous opponents on the battlefield.
雷の呼吸一の型霹靂一閃
The third one is one that I'm sure a lot of people will recognize and probably one that most people want to play, and it's the Manchild. Now what I mean by Manchild, because that does seem pretty derogatory. I'm not specifically calling it a bad thing, but it's the person who has not really grown up a lot, and as such, they're goofy, ridiculous, funny, silly, but incredibly competent, but people just wouldn't expect that because they're so ridiculous.
Here's a picture of me in outer space.
You went into outer space. You.
Sure. You've never been? Would you like to see my Grammy Award?
No shonen heroes fall into this trope, but one of the most common examples used is either Goku or Luffy. And Luffy really is a great example, somebody who's incredibly silly, to the point where many people do not take him seriously, despite how genuinely capable he is. And this one actually is tangentially related to another type, the shonen protagonist, which would also be Goku and Luffy and Naruto. Now, it's slightly different than the man-child because they don't have to necessarily have that childlike character, but they are generally incredibly good-hearted and always willing to do the right thing, which then almost causes the villains to underestimate them because they try so hard to be the right person, to be that champion of justice, that you ignore the fact that they are actually incredibly powerful. How could somebody who's so goody two-shoes actually have that genuine power? Now, this one is a little bit difficult, and I don't necessarily agree with its labeling of the shonen protagonist, because Goku definitely does not fall into this category. In fact, there's many moments that prove he is not really that champion of justice or a good guy. That was actually just a mistranslation in one of the dubs. But regardless, it is a fun archetype, but it's a little less of the subtle variety when it comes to these, because you're not really trying to hide your power, and therefore that crouching moron, hidden badass stuff doesn't come out nearly as much. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend this one, especially since, let's be fair, a lot of people playing TTRPGs are probably already trying to play a shonen protagonist. So yeah, you're not really gonna get anywhere with that. Now, there are other types of this archetype that you could fit other than the ones I just listed. However, I don't think many of them are very good for TTRPGs in general. One of them, for example, just to explain why I don't think they're very good for TTRPGs, is the second fiddle. The person who is the sidekick to the main character, who by contrast does not seem as powerful until you put them into a regular situation where you realize just how powerful they are. Talking about Goku, we'll continue with that and talk about Krillin. Krillin is not seen as powerful. In fact, he's considered a joke in the Dragon Ball Z universe by the fandom. However, if you take into account everything he's done, he's actually literally the strongest human on the planet. And most people wouldn't recognize that because he's surrounded by literal gods.
Excuse you? I'm going to give you 5 seconds to apologize for what you just said.
Or what, midget? You gonna headbutt me in my junk?
Apologize.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't hurt me.
Oh, for the table.
But this isn't something you could really put into a TTRPG so much, because who are you going to play second fiddle for? I mean, that's really not something that's very fun, is to be relatively powerful compared to one of the other player characters. I mean, that's not really super fun to do in the first place. And so I have ignored those other archetypes and really listed the ones I think will work well in a TTRPG sense, and left the rest just for you to be able to discover on your own time. If you want to go see them, you can go to the Trope website, charactertropes.com, I think is what it's called. No, tvtropes.com. I remember what it was called this time. Hey, honestly, I would just think about which type fits best with your character concept or NPC idea. Each one offers a unique and dynamic balancing of their goofy and badass traits, and it's key to making sure that your character shines within the game. Now, if you are playing this as a player character, the number one thing you have to do is embrace the contrast. You need to lean into the goofy, foolish side of your character during social interactions and downtime. Let them be the one who's always making jokes, tripping over their own feet, or just generally acting like they don't have a clue what's going on. But when it's time for action, that is when you flip the script. Because the truth is, you don't really need to be any more competent or confident than anyone else when it comes time to kick tail. You just want the contrast between your usual antics and you being serious to really truly speak for itself. You want to balance the humor and the heroics. You want to make sure your character's humor doesn't overshadow their ability to contribute meaningfully to the party's success. You have to understand when to make a joke and when to be serious. It's great to be the funny one, but remember that your character is still a badass underneath it all. Not only that, even the largest jokesters have genuine emotion underneath, and exploring that is one of the most important parts of this archetype.
James, you're off your meds, aren't you?
I'm better off without him. Take him if I start feeling down.
You know that's not how the medicine works. You're not well.
The fun isn't necessarily in the fact that they are funny and also super powerful, but also why is that the case? There's almost always a genuine emotional connection underneath that concept. To wonder why somebody so lighthearted and goofy would be that capable, would allow themselves to train themselves that much, which would be that focused on being that powerful, or why do they have that power when they are that lighthearted?
極限の極限まで磨け。じいちゃん、ちょい前までブチギレだったじゃん。刀の打ち方を知ってるか？不純物や余分なものを飛ばし、鋼の純度を高め。でも俺は鋼じゃねえよな。生身だからさ。
Again, Iroh is a great example of this. He was a powerful war general and a war criminal, and he is that lighthearted because he's attempting to push away from that past and learn self-peace after losing something important to him. That emotion is one of the most important key parts of this archetype. But not only that, there's more than you could do than just that, especially when it comes to mechanics. Because I understand that when you're trying to do this, there is the difficulty of understanding that if you're trying to be silly and goofy and not show how powerful you are until the moment's right, you can be screwing over your party because the balanced encounter is probably for the amount of characters at the table, and if all the characters are helping except for one, that's going to inherently put your party at a downward edge, and that's not super fair. They will be at a disadvantage because of you. So there are ways to circumvent this. Honestly, I would narrate how your character's silliness might accidentally lead them to success. Because the truth is, when it comes to building your character, you need to support the trope. Choose class features, feats, and spells which will reinforce both sides of your character. Take the monk, for example. Their high dexterity and martial arts abilities can easily be flavored as being lucky or accidental until things get serious. This way, you don't always have to immediately flip that badass switch when combat happens. Sometimes you bumble through combat by accident, and the only thing keeping that line distinct is the flavor of it. You can reserve the certain class features and powers for only when your character is getting serious and doing their badassery, sure, but you could also just flavor any of your class abilities as you doing things by accident, and then start describing them differently when you start doing them on purpose. That's a perfectly fine way of doing things. Either way, make sure there's a clear distinction between the bumbling fool and the genuine dangerous fighter. That is most of the charm of this trope. And don't forget about character development while you're at it. Make sure to plan a story arc where the party gradually learns about your character's hidden abilities, or lack thereof. Maybe at first think your character's successes are just pure luck, but over time you start to realize there's more to them than meets the eye. You can play around with whether your character is even aware of their own badassery, or if they genuinely believe that they're just getting by on luck and happenstance. See this split personality trope as one of the options of doing that. And then if you want to play this as a DM PC or a DM NPC, you need to make sure to introduce this trope in the proper ways. First off, make sure you do surprise the party. Introduce this NPC as a harmless bumbling fool. Of course, that's like the whole point of the trope, until they can demonstrate their actual abilities. And it's honestly way better if this character demonstrates value outside of their funny persona or badass abilities. If they're flighty but kind, or clumsy but genuine, it can go a long way to allowing the players to embrace the character as they are, which makes the reveal that much more rewarding. The reveal should be both a shock and a delight, instantly changing how the party views the character. It's that wow moment that makes the trope so much more fun. But be careful. Don't make it a Deus Ex Machina. The best time to reveal these things is when the player don't necessarily need it, and therefore it doesn't feel like you're trying to save them from their own consequence. Instead, make it something that happens when it would be an amusing addition to the story, not a necessary one.
It's the Pumat's turn.
The Pumat's turn? Ooh, they get to fight! Oh, shit!
So, Pumat, who sees this happen, is first he sees Caduceus make that face and go, "Oh, were you hungry?" And then sees the whole assault go, "Oh no, this is real bad. Pumat's upstairs." And this Pumat goes ahead and runs this way. It's going to go ahead and double dash and head back up and the stairway out of the way.
Watch all the Pumats be blood hunters or something. Yeah. Crazy. They start slicing their arms.
But here's the thing, use these NPCs sparingly. The impact of an NPC using this trope is strongest when they're not overused. If they pop up too often, it dilutes the effect and just makes them annoying to have around. Make sure that you are focusing on making this character somebody who is genuinely impactful to the emotions of the party, more so than the mechanics. That makes it far more fun when it chooses that they're badass. Again, I've made it incredibly clear throughout this whole video, the whole charm of this trope is seeing somebody who you like prove to be that competent. Ultimately, the crouching moron hidden badass is a trope that brings so much to the table. Humor, surprise, and jaw-dropping moments to stick with for a long time. And when it's done right, these characters aren't just about the humor and laughs. They're about defying expectations, creating depth, and giving their story an extra kick of genuine unpredictability, which is really fun. Remember, the key is making the archetype work well in that balance of funny and, well, genuinely fun to be around. Keep the humor sharp, but don't let it overshadow the badass moments of the PCs or your other player characters. Whether they're the goofy sidekick who saves the day or the unsuspecting hero who steps up when no one else can, it's still an incredibly powerful and fun moment when they finally get to realize their full potential. And isn't that what we want to do in playing these games? Be able to reach our full potential, explore a fun story, and make all of our friends laugh. So go out into the world, make it your own. Don't forget to play your role, and listen to my wife gives the call to action. Where'd she go?